I started this channel full of excitement, but something along the way, something changed. And it wasn't subtle, it went big, like an atom bomb exploding in every direction. It's like I'm playing a scavenger hunt, trying to find all the flaws, and the more I find, the merrier, apparently. And even just by saying this out loud, it makes me think, gosh, why do I do that? This is so boring. And honestly, everything else started to feel like a heavy burden. Grab a drink, let's get cozy. This one's a bit more personal. Okay, so I've been, I don't know why I find it so embarrassing to admit it out loud, but I've been watching The Traitors. I didn't plan to, but what can I say? I'm hooked. If you don't know what I'm talking about, The Traitors is a reality TV show, and it's basically an intense social game where a few of the players are secretly chosen as traitors, while the rest of the players, they call themselves the Faithfuls, try to discover who they are and unmask them. Now, if the traitors stay hidden, they get the prize, and if the Faithfuls figure it out, they win. So naturally, the traitors try to put on their best act to look like the Faithfuls in order to increase their chances. And that's where it got really disturbing for me. What shocked me was how people who seemed genuinely honest, open-hearted, kind, people you really root for at the beginning, started shifting as soon as they were given the role of traitor. And they didn't just play the part, they became it. They started lying, manipulating, and they were really, really good at it. And it actually scared me a bit how convincing they were. I kept thinking, wow, I would have totally fallen for this. And it wasn't because they were bad people. Of course, it's a game after all. They were just handed a role and they stepped into it. And over time, they started to enjoy it. And eventually, they even turned on each other in order to survive and stay in the game. It reminded me of a famous psychological study from the 70s, the Stanford prison experiment. I do have a point, I promise you. Now, in case you're not familiar with this study, let me tell you a little bit about it. So Philip Zimbardo, a psychologist, recruited a group of college students to participate in a simulated prison experiment. Half of the students were randomly assigned as guards and the other half were prisoners. It took place in a fake prison setup in the basement of a university building, and it was supposed to last 2 weeks, but ended after 6 days. Why? Because it went out of control. The guards began abusing their power and authority. The prisoners broke down emotionally. People forgot it was just a simulation. The titles guard and prisoner became real. Zimbardo's conclusion was this: the roles we're given, or the ones we adopt, can dramatically shape the way we think, feel, and behave. We basically live up to that label. Now, I do want to mention that this study has been heavily criticized over the years. Some participants later said that they were just playing along. It's been revealed that the guards may have been encouraged by Zimbardo to act in a certain way. So yeah, the setup was flawed and ethically a bit of a disaster. However, I don't think we can completely dismiss it, because even with those flaws, what emerged was really disturbing. People did embody their roles. Some guards went beyond instructions and invented their own harsh tactics. Zimbardo himself got so caught up in the simulation that he lost perspective and needed his girlfriend to step in and put some sense into him to shut it down. And I think that says a lot. So while it's not a perfect experiment, I think it still offers a powerful metaphor and shows us that the roles we take on, especially when supported by a social structure, can seriously mess with our sense of self. There's a saying I once heard: whatever name you call a dog, eventually they'll come when you call them. Similarly, another saying I have in mind now is: whatever you expect of people, they seldom disappoint. And it's all to say that labels are sticky, they shape us. And just like in the traders, people who started off as kind and decent became something completely different when society or a game gave them another role. And that got me thinking, what roles or titles have I been living by? Because lately I've been feeling so burnt out. And it's not just because of what I do, it's because of years and years of silently carrying negative titles I've given myself, titles that shaped how I showed up in the world. I'm noticing that as I grow older, my body isn't as good at ignoring them. It's like I'm living by those labels even more, and it's exhausting. And lately, my mind and body are just yelling at me to do something about it. For a long time, I felt like whatever I do is just bad. And I've realized that I've been walking around wearing invisible name tags that say things like not creative, not smart, not interesting, not valuable, not good. And it didn't start recently. When I look back at my childhood journals, I see the same fears written over and over and over again. And my biggest worry was that eventually someone would figure me out. And so I worked tirelessly to learn more, to mimic others, to observe every detail in every situation, just so that no one would see the truth. And just like the guards in that experiment or the traders in that show, I've been leaving those roles. I've internalized them, I've made them my own and part of my identity. And it feels like every time they rise to the surface, it's like they speak louder and more assertively and pulling me even deeper into that narrative. But here's the thing: if we can take on destructive roles, maybe we can choose empowering ones too. What if I changed my label? What if instead of calling myself a defect, I started calling myself human, brave, ambitious, a student? The same way the traders in the show rose to the challenge of deception, what if I rose to the challenge of being a bit more kind to myself? What if my title was a growing creator, an imperfect storyteller, curious mind? What would change? And that, my friends, brings me to today's topic. That was a long intro. I hope that all the dots will be connected by the end. So yeah, if you've noticed that I disappeared from YouTube for a while, you're not wrong. I did. And so I thought it's only fair to let you in a bit and share with you why I took that break, what's been going on behind the scenes, what are the titles I've been carrying that no longer fit and that I'm learning to let go of, and I guess some of the lessons that come with that kind of process. So yeah, grab a drink, let's get cozy. This one's a bit more personal. Let's rewind a bit. I started this channel full of excitement and a sincere love for filming, editing, documenting, sharing content about books, about learning, and about figuring life out, I guess. But something along the way, something changed. Part of it was external. My channel grew quicker than I anticipated. Some videos got way more views and thoughtful comments than I honestly ever imagined. And while it was beautiful and exciting, it was also very scary. I still haven't replied to many of those comments because I really wanted to take my time and to write thoughtful responses back. But so many times I found myself struggling with articulating myself, and I didn't know how to put into words all the appreciation that I felt. So I didn't write anything at all. And I started to procrastinate, which raised a lot of questions, such as, is this really the right path for me? Am I really able to do this? And the longer I waited, the more pressured I felt. Like, people have expectations of me and I constantly disappoint them. And it's something that I struggle with on my personal life as well. And then suddenly to feel this way on YouTube too, it felt like the scale is much bigger now, and it spiraled and everything got out of control. And I also started falling into this trap of constantly asking myself, what kind of content is even good or interesting? The second part was internal. As I grow older, I feel like I'm less able to mask what I truly feel. And because I ignored it for so long, lately I've been flooded with emotions that just won't let me rest. And they make me feel so weak. And I hate that. I compare it to a leak in a house. First, you use a towel, then you can grab a bucket, but eventually the ceiling falls in. And that's how I felt. Like I was in some kind of survival mode. I couldn't think clearly. Creativity out of the window. I kept trying to create something worth watching, but I also kept doubting, deleting, restarting, deleting again. I got so obsessed with wanting to feel in control and on top of things that outside of YouTube, every conversation started to feel like it's stealing time from making content. I was fighting the need to rest and got obsessed with staying at my desk. But the longer I sat there, the more frustrated I got because I still couldn't create something I was proud of. I wanted to do so much that I ended up doing nothing. Even vacations and traveling, which is something that I love very much, started to feel like something that I had to get over with so that I could rush back to work. All I wanted to do was to create content, and I felt like life is preventing me from doing that, and so I had a lot of resentment towards it. And I didn't even like the content I was rushing to finish. And honestly, everything else started to feel like a heavy burden. In moments like these, ADHD doesn't knock on the door, it kicks it down. Everything turns into a blurry, chaotic mess. And even when I finally managed to post something, as soon as it was scheduled, I'd panic about the next video. And even when I managed to drag myself out of the house and to go out or to travel, it was only to come back feeling more lost and broken. So I started isolating myself and paused. I didn't say anything, just silence, because that's all I could do in that moment. And to be honest, it was uncomfortable because in this weird world we live in, stepping back translates to not caring. Stepping back feels like failure. And even if it's the healthiest thing I can do, it doesn't matter. It feels horrible. I found that I only feel proud when I've had a productive day, when I worked all night, when I didn't take any breaks. It's like my way of telling the world, look, I'm resilient, I work hard, I matter. And as a result, slowing down or stepping away feels like the opposite. I'm weak, I'm lazy, I'm not trying hard enough, I failed. But I knew I needed space. I knew it because there was not an ounce of resistance in my body arguing with that realization. And it wasn't subtle, it went big, like an atom bomb exploding in every direction. I took a break from everything. But that doesn't make it easy. It's not like you take a break and your mind suddenly comes down. On the contrary, once you stop, all your thoughts come racing in even more. So I realized I needed a long break, one long enough for my mind to actually believe it's okay to rest and settle into that mode. It's been 2 months, and believe it or not, I'm still not there yet. But clearly, as you can see, I'm filming. I've also recorded a few more videos and I'm in the process of editing them. So as you can understand, this break is mostly on the outside and not so much on the inside. And definitely not from the expectations I still hold for myself. And even though part of me keeps saying that I'm just prolonging this healing process, I still can't seem to let go. It's just so damn difficult. So here I am on my break, trying to breathe, to think, to let go of expectations, to give myself permission to pause and to change the labels I've been living by. One label I really want to stop using is I'm a perfectionist, because that just makes me perfectly stuck. If you've been around here for a while, you know that my struggle with perfectionism is a lifelong one. There's always this voice in my head nagging me that whatever it is I'm doing is not good and that I should try again. It's like I'm playing a scavenger hunt, trying to find all the flaws and worst parts of myself and in everything I do. And the more I find, the merrier, apparently. Perfectionism tells me to go crazy when I hear the sentence, "You are good enough." It makes me want to cry out, good enough is not good enough for me. I want to be excellent, flawless. And that is so messed up because it's an illusion. Even now, working on this video, I kept telling myself that I shouldn't film it because it's not good. There are no real lessons here, no techniques that you can use or answers that can help you out. I'm just venting here, and it's not fair to burden you with this. And I really had to be very strict with myself and shut that voice down and force myself to sit down and film this video regardless of its quality, especially because I'm doubtful. That's when I need to practice this muscle the most. I keep convincing myself that pushing just a little bit more will make all the difference, when in fact it quite literally makes no difference, because I'll be standing in the finish line with nothing in my hands. I want to keep reminding myself of something Julia Cameron says in The Artist's Way, and to see perfectionism for what it really is. It's not a form of humility. It's actually self-centeredness. It's that relentless pressure that drives me to write the perfect script, to be the perfect daughter, perfect partner, perfect friend, perfect person who always looks like everything is under control, whose house is always spotless. That's ego in disguise. That's not modesty. And even just by saying this out loud, it makes me think, gosh, why do I do that? This is so boring. And I'm not talking about YouTube, just in general in life. This is what I do. I let perfectionism take over. I sand down every unique edge. I remove everything that feels real or original and turn it into something homogeneous, lifeless, and something that is very distant from who I really am and from what I actually care about. And that's not only stupid, it's also very counterproductive because it's exhausting. When I feel that I'm not able to be that perfect version I created, I disappear and I feel like I don't have control over it, like it's bigger than me and it's controlling me, and I just can't show myself to the world, because if I'm not that, it means that I can't be. I want to let mistakes happen because I know that eventually they will lead me to clarity. They will teach me how to be better. And I know that that's the only way to get good at something. I want to keep moving forward without getting so caught up in the details that don't really matter. And I want to label things as warm-ups and drafts and not demand perfection from the get-go. One of the first things I learned during this time was that rest is not just about recovering energy. It's about accessing my inner self, my wants, my thoughts, my creativity. Basically what allows me to feel like myself. And all of that only shows up when we stop trying so hard. There's something called the default mode network in our brains, and it activates when we're resting, daydreaming, basically when we're not focusing on any specific task. And it turns out that's when we make the most interesting connections. The brain is literally stitching ideas in the background. On the other side of it, what we have is stress. Chronic stress floods the system with cortisol, which can mess up with sleep, with memory and creativity, and basically with all the things that we need in order to think clearly. For me, I had no major creative breakthroughs while I was pushing myself weekly or walking around decision fatigued about every little thing. It's like I couldn't hear myself. And weirdly enough, shortly after I decided to take a break, I had 3 new video ideas that just come to me effortlessly. That's something that didn't happen to me in so long. And this, as a result, made me feel even more relaxed because I didn't need to chase ideas. I was also surprised by the effect it had on smaller but more meaningful moments, like I suddenly knew what I wanted to cook for dinner. And because I was so aligned with myself, I was actually enjoying the process of cooking. I know, right? Like, who am I? Or I remember a few weeks after I decided to take a break, I suddenly got clear on what would make me happy to do during the weekend and other things like that. And I know that it sounds small, but when your mind is not clear, it's just, yeah, I was so happy to feel these feelings again and to be able to enjoy these moments that make living much more enjoyable. It didn't feel like that right away, and it's still not. It's foggy and confusing, but something is definitely shifting quietly in the background. Now I can say that I feel a bit more grounded, more in tune with what matters to me. Now I know that instead of calling myself lazy or saying that I'm indecisive, I want to tell myself that I'm powerfully pausing, and I want to practice regulating my nervous system as part of my day-to-day process and not as something that is separate from it. Now, everyone struggles with regulating their emotions and nervous system, just like everyone forgets where they put their phone or keys sometimes. But for a neurodivergent brain, people with ADHD, for example, that's a constant battle. And so I know that this is one of my biggest challenges because I feel so intensely, and that makes it really hard to control my emotions. That is why I need to pause quite often in order to do that. And while I'm pausing, I need to constantly remind myself that I'm not my burnout, I'm not my fear, I'm not my productivity. I'm something that is way more complex than that. I get to choose the title, and that, I've learned, is the beginning of everything. Taking a break from YouTube and in general wasn't just about rest. It was about stepping out of roles I didn't even know I was playing. It was about giving myself the permission and the opportunity to do things differently and perhaps write a new script. So coming back, I'm going to do it a bit differently. I'm going to post every other week just because that's the rhythm that feels doable and gentle. I've already created a buffer of videos so that I don't have to scramble. And I'm reminding myself that I'm just a beginner. I'm learning my flow. I shouldn't compare myself to others. I should plan around energy and not just deadlines. And that I want to build a creative life that feels aligned and not something that is forced. The content would be more or less the same, some bookish content, personal reflections, maybe a vlog here and there if I get brave. And we'll see where that work in progress gets me. And now I want to ask you, if you're feeling stuck or not enough or always behind, first of all, a big hug to you. And then maybe think about, what titles have you been carrying and who gave them to you? And more importantly, what do you want to call yourself now? Let's rise to the roles we choose for ourselves. I know we can do this. If you're still here, I want you to know that I missed being here. I missed checking in with you. I hope that you're doing very, 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 very well. I thank you so much for your patience. Some of you were checking in on me, which just melted my heart. I don't even know what to say. I appreciate it so much. You're truly the best. And I hope that the content I create would generate good and positive feelings and thoughts. And in general, I just want it to be worth your while. Thank you so much again. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you in my next videos as well. Until then, I'm sending you lots of love and see you next time. Mwah.